Welcome to Tech Career Podcast. Creating valuable and relevant content to encourage, motivate, and empower you to achieve your career goals. Welcome to Tech Career Podcast. My name is Christian Trujillo, and I am your host. Today's episode is part of our series called My First Job in Tech, where we talk about the struggles and successes that many have had while getting their first job in technology. And today's special guest is John Kerr. John Kerr serves as the Managing Director of Mastering Technical Sales LLC. The company is dedicated to serving the needs of presales engineers across the globe through a combination of skills enablement, management consulting, and keynote speeches. John is also one of the authors of a book that really has become a Bible for everyone or anyone working as a sales engineer called Mastering Technical Sales. In addition to Mastering Technical Sales, John has been published in various media, ranging from InfoWorld and CIO Magazine to the Wall Street Journal. He is widely credited with the creation of the first law of discovery and also the original demo crime files list in 1995. John, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for joining.
You're welcome, Christian, and thanks for the awesome introduction. I truly appreciate it and thrilled to be here with you.
Fantastic. Well, thank you. I want to publicly say this. I want to thank you so much for accepting my invitation to connect on LinkedIn to begin with. I remember reaching out to you right after I read your book. And I just wanted to say thank you for writing the book because it has really addressed a lot of the many challenges that sales engineers or pre-sales engineers face in the field.
Well, that's wonderful to hear. And that's really the reason that Erin and I wrote the book to start with, is so people could learn from all the really stupid and dumb mistakes that we had made. So just to make life better for everybody else, right?
It's a great way to give back. It's great to learn from experienced sales engineers and the things that you guys went through, and you guys are sharing that knowledge with us. Oh, that's fantastic. So thank you for that. You have been very successful in your career. I was looking at your LinkedIn profile and some of your bio there, and I noticed, you have been a manager, a VP of pre-sales, a CIO, and now a managing director of your own organization. Now, I'm sure it wasn't always like this way, right? I mean, I'm sure you had to start somewhere, and probably just like everyone else, you experienced some challenges along the way. Would you agree with that?
Oh, absolutely. What would life be without challenges, right?
Exactly. I agree. We would love to hear your story, the story of your first tech job. And I'm sure that you have great experiences with that. And so we would like to hear how it went. How it was like to have your first job in tech. What did you go through? So why don't you share the story with us?
Sure, happy to do that, Christian. And actually, I'm going to cheat, and I'm going to combine my first two jobs in technology because one leads to the other, which I think is probably the reason behind this podcast anyway. So I graduated as a chemical engineer. Like everybody else in the profession, especially in sales engineering, you can't go to university and get a degree in being a sales engineer. So I thought I wanted to be an engineer. I decided I didn't want to be a scientist, so I became a chemical engineer and got towards the end of my senior year and going through all the various interviews and everything else and just applied for them. And fortunately, I ended up with an interview with Esso, which is the British affiliate of Exxon. And they were kind enough to offer me a job as a chemical engineer, as a process engineer at their oil refinery in Fawley, Southampton, which is right in the southern part of England. Now, what I do remember at that interview was I had to go down to the refinery, and I remember sitting in front of this panel of three or four quite distinguished and senior engineers, and they just hammered me with questions. and none of the questions were theoretical. They weren't testing book knowledge. They were testing how well could my brain actually take book knowledge and apply it to the real world. So they were asking me how to start up and stop pumps, how to fix a heat exchanger, what to do if there's an emergency on a process unit. And I was totally out of my depth. And for the first 5-10 minutes, I was panicking. I probably had flop sweat on, and then I realized like this is why you go to university. This is why you're an engineer, because you think structurally, you think logically, and you are a problem solver. And I kind of took a deep breath, got the oxygen into my lungs, wiggled my toes. I still remember that. I wiggled my toes in my big steel cap boots, and then just kind of like accepted the questions and got into it. And I know I got some of the answers wrong, but when they offered me the job 2 or 3 weeks later, they told me that one of the reasons I was offered the job was the fact that I was trying to apply, as I said, book knowledge into real everyday life. So that's how I became a chemical engineer. So fast forward a couple of years, I've been working as a chemical engineer on the refinery, kind of learning my trade. And then I had an opportunity to be transferred over here to the United States and go to work in Florham Park, New Jersey, which is the headquarters of Exxon Research and Engineering. And so that was a pretty prestigious transfer. So I was thrilled about that. And so they sent me over here to the US, which, by the way, is where I met and fell in love with my Yankee sweetheart wife, Allison. So, good things happen from that as well.
I agree. The
Yeah,
same thing
no
happened to
kidding.
me here.
No kidding, right? So that was, the trip was worth it just for that. And I was over here for about a year. But as part of that, I was working on a project looking at how to apply technology to the everyday life of an engineer working on a refinery. And so that mainly involved slide rules and tables and better note taking and automating a few things like calculating pressure drops through piping and stuff like that. And then I realized that there was a place for automation and computers in this. So when I got back to the oil refinery, there was a vendor who came in who was selling basically a reporting language. It was called Ramis. There's still a competitor out to it now called Focus, actually, from Information Builders. And it gave you the ability to process files that were basically kept locked up within what was called data processing back then, and allow the everyday end user engineer to access data on those files and to get meaningful information out of it. And what I discovered, Christian, was that I was a okay engineer, but my talent that I had was I could explain complicated technical things to non-technical people such that they either wanted to use them or buy them. And it turned out that one of the sales engineers from the vendor who was selling this technology, a lady called Rita Callahan, I still owe her my career, said, "Hey, you're pretty good at this. You want a job?" And by this time I was back in England. And I said, "Sure, why not?" So they started interviewing me. I said, "Oh, by the way, my wife's American. We've been living back over here in the UK for 2 years, but she'd love to move back to the US. Can I have a job in corporate headquarters?" And they went, "Oh, okay." So that proved that if you don't ask, you don't get.
There you
So
go. Yeah.
lo and behold, I got an offer letter to appear as what was called a sales support engineer working for this company, Mathematica, in Princeton, New Jersey. And I turned up the first day in the middle of August. My boss had never met me. He'd only spoken to me on the phone. And that started my life as a sales engineer. And I hate to say it, that was in August 1984.
Wow. Wow. Just a few months after I was born.
Yeah, I hate it when people say that.
It's a great story.
Yeah.
I love it. I really love that story. And as you were sharing the story, first of all, I had to agree with you about great things happen when you come to America, right? Because
Yes.
I myself came to America after high school when I was 18 years old. And I also met my wife here. So it's a great story that I share
Yes.
with you there.
Yeah.
You were mentioning about some of the challenges you were experiencing during the interview, right? And just like yourself, especially when you're trying to get your first job, you get drilled down on questions and the interviews can be very nerve-wracking, right?
Yes.
But you share some of your strategies, some of the things that you did to be able to face those challenges and the nerves that you were feeling, right? Can you go into that a little bit more? Share a little bit more about that experience itself.
Sure. Well, so looking back on it with hindsight, right, you can then learn from your experiences.
Mm-hmm.
So I learned that you can certainly over prepare for an interview. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and one of the most important things of being an interview is you need to be you. I mean, John needs to be John, Christian needs to be Christian, right? So
Mm-hmm.
if you don't come across as being authentic, to use that horrible phrase, but it fits here, I think that definitely comes across. And fast forwarding a number of years as a hiring manager, I mean, you look for skills and capabilities and everything else, but I think the number one thing I always hired for was attitude. And I think if you then go into the interview with a positive attitude, which is what happened to me in that engineering interview, after about 10 minutes, right, when I said, start using your brain and stop panicking, had that positive attitude, went into process step by step mode. That comes through. I mean, that comes through in your nonverbal communications, your verbal communications, and everything else. So don't over prepare. Is certainly
Mm-hmm.
one. The positive attitude, I think, is incredibly important. Um, when you do want to prepare, you need to learn something about the people that you are interviewing with. So what I do remember is that I had a bunch of questions to ask about the job itself and life on the
Mm-hmm.
refinery, safety implications, and everything else. So, I didn't ask any corporate strategy questions about Exxon because why would a 21-year-old kid be asking that? But what I did ask was relevant information about my day-to-day job. Something that went a little bit wider than the day-to-day job and its impact and how they measured me, how I'd know if they thought I was a good engineer and everything else. So, have questions, have relevant
Mm-hmm.
questions, and think through the questions. Do remember that as much as they are interviewing you, you are interviewing them. And I think a lot of
That's right.
young people lose sight of that.
Yeah, that's a great point. And as you were talking, you mentioned something that word, that the be authentic. I mean, so many times, we see people going into interviews or speaking to somebody else and they try to be someone that they're not, right? And I think finding who you are and being who you are in front of everyone, is going to be much better, right? Because what do you say was one of the things that they saw in you that made them decide, to hire you?
I think what they told me was that they saw, I mean, they literally after 10 minutes of the interview saw my brain kick in.
Uh-huh.
I defeated the lizard brain. I got rid of the panic, and my brain kicked in. And they said that's what we want because you're working on an oil refinery. Things go wrong, and we rely on our
Got it.
engineers, whether they are 22 years old or 52 years old, to process what's happening and potentially take action and remediate it or fix it. We don't want people who are panicking and running around. And so
That
that's
makes sense.
after the momentary panic, I think is
Mm.
what I showed to them, and that certainly came in useful, at many points in my career. Not panicking and maintaining a cool head and trying to think things through.
It's a great point. Now, as you switched from that job and that field into the tech job, right, to the tech world, what made you decide to pursue that type of field, that career in technology?
Uh, so I alluded to this a bit earlier. I realized that I would be a good engineer, but I was never going to be a great world class engineer. But what I did discover that I had that talent for was, again, taking something complicated that is technical and explaining it in everyday language to everyday people. And when people
Mm.
even ask me now, John, what does your company do? I say, basically, we teach highly technical geeks how to explain geeky stuff to business people so they will buy it.
I
Right?
love it.
And so
I love it.
that hasn't changed in whatever, 30, 36, 40 years. And so that's where my talent lay. And it turned out that sales engineering, having watched what Rita did, the sales engineer from this vendor, and some other sales engineers who came in, that's what they did, and that's what they did so well. And I thought, I can do that. So that's why I asked for the job.
That's very
Yeah.
inspiring. That's very inspiring because I feel that in my case in particular, right? As I go through life and as I discover the passions that I have, which are many in many different areas, you start questioning and asking yourself, what is it that I've been called to do? Right? What is my calling? What is my passion? What should I be focusing all my strengths into? Right? And so I think your story is very inspiring because it shows how when you find your passion and strengths, then that takes you to a road of success. And I feel that with your story, what you're sharing, you found that passion, you found your strengths, and then you follow that, and look where you are now, right? I mean, and you keep doing that, you keep following, continue to do, like you said, the same thing that you were doing back then, right?
Yeah, and I mean, I joke, but I am now really kind of on my fifth career. I mean, I started as an engineer, then I became an
Mhm.
individual contributor sales engineer, moved up the ranks and the ladder somewhat in that, then jumped out a couple of times and went into the regular IT world. I was a director of applied technology and and an IT leader. Then came back into sales engineering, became a business leader. I was a sales rep at some point too, and now I ended up running my own company. And as a sideline, I'm an author. So it took me a while to figure out what really made me happy that I could stick there. Um,
I love
I
it.
think
I
I
love it.
secretly knew when I was 24, but it took me a long time to end up there, I think.
You hear that a lot. You hear that if you already know inside you what you're supposed to do, but it takes a little bit of work and time and experience, right? Until you find exactly what it is.
Yeah, I mean, it's like my son. And anyone who ever met my son from the age of about 5 onwards would take you aside afterwards and say, that kid's going to be a lawyer. Right? It was just the way he was.
Mhm.
I mean, and that's where his skills were in terms of arguing with things and arguing with people and reading things and everything else. But it took him a number of years after he left college to figure out, oh, I do want to go to law school. And I think that's probably because he had to figure it out himself. And
Mhm.
everyone else was telling him he'd be a great lawyer and ultimately a politician. But he needed to make that decision for himself and not be pushed into it by other people.
That's true. Wow, that's great. That's great. Now, going back to your first job,
Yeah.
and as we look at some of the challenges you experience, if we talk about skills or experience or their lack of, right, or maybe the resume, right? How do you write your resume? How do you apply for that position? What do you think are some of the challenges that you were experiencing as you were getting to apply for jobs?
Oh, well, so I was a little fortunate there. In obviously, I had a resume applying for the chemical engineering job with SO, but
Hmm.
the job ultimately as the sales engineer, like 4 or 5 years later, which got me over here, I pretty much tripped over it. I mean, I was offered it by the
Hmm.
vendor who'd said you'll be good at this, and then I had to hastily scramble to put together a resume to give them. Um, what I would say is, and this is advice I still provide to people now, is make your resume about your achievements and what you've done, and give concrete examples of it. Um, so yes, academic qualifications are important, and in some parts of the world they're more important than others. But if you can cite specific achievements, things that you did, they are
Hmm.
great things to talk about within the interview itself. Far more entertaining both for you and for the interviewer, and lets you become the real you, back to that authenticity.
Now, as we look at our careers, right, and we look back, would you say that there was somebody coaching you, somebody helping you along the way, maybe even before you got the job or as you were in the job? Was that important to you?
Oh, definitely. So first of all, I had a fantastic teacher who guided me through high school. Hats off to you, Mr. Beckett. Um, and so he was the one who kind of helped me figure out that I even wanted to go to university, because I was the first person on either side of my family to have any kind of advanced education. Then he convinced me I didn't want to be a physicist or a chemist. I was much better suited to getting my hands dirty and fixing things. So Mr. Beckett guided me into being an engineer. Then going into university, there's a professor who helped me, Professor Wakeman. So he was my guide, my unofficial guide and mentor. So he was kind of fabulous in terms of helping me kind of get prepared for the real world. And then as I moved out into the real world of being an engineer, there were several of the more experienced engineers who had 10, 15 years additional over and above me, who kind of took me under their wing and helped me out. So I think one is don't be afraid to ask for help. Most people are willing to help you and give you a little bit of time. And then two, if you ask for help, you have to accept the help. I mean, you have to show that you are listening and processing and putting things in place. I always say, that there's the trusted advisor, and we've all given people advice, but do they take it? So a trusted advisor is somebody who gives advice and it is taken. So I have been fortunate in all stages of my life, actually, from a very young age onwards, to have people in my life who have helped me and guided me and have had the difficult conversation with me and give me the nudge. And I think that's fabulous. And I realize not everyone is as fortunate as I have been in that regard. But don't be afraid to ask for help, and it can come from the most unlikely and strangest of sources.
Yeah, no, I feel it's very powerful and very helpful, right, in everyone's life to have a coach, a mentor. And if you currently don't have one, just like as John said, ask, ask for advice, ask for help. And that's how you get mentors. That's how you get people to help you. That's how you get people to coach you by asking, by reaching out. We don't have all the answers. We know that, right? And there's people that have experience in other areas that we haven't experienced. And so by reaching out, going out and asking those questions that you have, you'll get those answers that you're looking for. And so it seems like that's very important for anyone to have a coach, a mentor, right, in their careers.
Yeah. I mean, and they can be very kind of peripheral mentors. I mean, I tell the story of we were, so this shows you how long ago, we were starting to roll out an email system within the refinery in the early 1980s that would let us send email from the refinery to a research unit that we had in London, and then also over to headquarters in the United States. And I was given I volunteered for the job of teaching the refinery manager, who was the ultimate boss of like thousands of people in the refinery, how to use email. So this guy, Mr. Winchester, I don't even know his first name, was, I guess, my boss's 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 boss. So you can imagine how nervous I was when I walked into his office, and I had to explain how to use it. And a couple of times, he called me and summoned me up to his office. But that is the reason that I got my assignment to the United States, because my boss's boss told me that when the list was put in front of Mr. Winchester of the candidates, he recognized my name.
Wow, that's very powerful.
So yeah, so little things, right? You never know.
That's a great story. And just to do a recap here, what we've been discussing, the fact that we should be authentic every time, right? The experience that you share with us about how if you apply what you learn in university, it actually works, right? And you just started doing that and that helped you. But this last part that you mentioned, a lot of the times we can be scared or afraid to face some challenges. The challenge of talking to the CTO or the CEO of the company and or the executives and sharing with them how to use certain things. Being a help desk representative, starting my career, I had to teach people how to use Outlook correctly or do certain things, right? Yeah. And so these opportunities give you face time and the ability to create relationships with people that will recognize you and will be able to say, you know what, this person did a great job at explaining this to me, and that can open up even more opportunities. So instead of shying away from the challenges, if you face them, if you go for it and you become you'll be yourself when you're doing that, people will recognize that.
Definitely.
John, I'm having a lot of fun with this interview. All the input, all the information, all the stories that you're sharing are very powerful and very insightful. And as we look back and look at all of your experience and all of the things that you have learned throughout your career, What are some of the things that you would suggest, some of the recommendations you have for those starting their careers in technology?
First of all, I would say realize that the first job you pick is probably not going to be the job that you're going to be retiring in 30, 35 years
Mm.
later. So yes, it is important. But don't overanalyze it. Secondly, do something that is going to light you up. I talk about the fact that I think I still have absolutely one of the best jobs in the world, and I love doing what I do now. And I get up in the morning. I'm thrilled. I'm excited about it. In the before times, I'd travel 150,000 miles a year and go to some really cool places
Mm-hmm.
to talk at sales kickoffs and things like that. And
Mm-hmm.
it's an awesome job. In order to do that, you kind of need to figure out what does light you up and what turns you off. And I had this explained to me by somebody a while back, and they called it a red list and a green list. And the green list are those things that light you up, that excite you, that make you passionate. And the red things are the ones that make you want to stay in bed and be grumpy and drink heavily and whatever else, right? And your first job, I think, just needs to be more green than red. If you can find a job that's all green and has no red in it, like that's awesome. But bear in mind that unless you're going to be working for a very, very small startup, you're going to be way, way down the organizational chart. You're not going to have a lot of opportunity to make anything more than minor tactical changes in what your company does, and you're pretty much living to a job description. And that's reality. That's the way that it is. Um, Having got into that job, though, you kind of look at, well, what can I take out of this? How is this going to make me a better person? And the really skilled person in that job, it's not just about them, it's about everybody else around them as well. And nowadays, when I do keynote speeches, I challenge the sales engineers, the audience, and I tell them, whether you've been an SE for 2 months or 20 years, cast a big shadow. And what cast a big shadow means is what other people in the company are you helping? And
Mm-hmm.
and even if you're you've just gone through, you're a new college graduate, you've gone through an NCG program, you've been with the company for 3 months, you got skills. I mean, there's a reason that company hired you. It's not just to do mundane things. Maybe you're way better at collaboration and social media. You've got some experience in technology that the folks in that company who've been there 10, 15 years don't have. Find a way to leverage that and use it, and share your toys and share it with other people. And if you share with other people, they will share it with you. So I guess to summarize all that, it's cast a big shadow. Even if you think you're a really, really small cog, you'll be surprised at what you can do.
I love it. That's fantastic. John, so we've been talking a lot about some of the great successes you've had in your career, but I'm sure that you also face and experience some challenges and failures. And could you please share with us some of those?
Oh, absolutely. I don't even know where to start with that. There have been so many. Actually, what I will do, I will share with you the story of my very first sales call as a sales engineer. So it is, so it's mid 1984, right? August, September 1984. And I'm going out with the sales manager at the time, this fellow called Joel, to do a demo for the Hershey Chocolate Company in Hershey, Pennsylvania. So most of you are familiar, at least here in the US, with Hershey, so you know what they do.
Mm-hmm.
And now at this point, I knew the product really well, and I could do what I thought was an amazing demo. I could make this product stand on its head. What I didn't necessarily have are all the sales skills, the professional skills that went along with it. And that's what I was kind of learning. So we go along. We're supposed to do a demo and a presentation of our product. And I'm up there and I'm demoing away and showing them all kinds of things. And the 60-minute meeting goes into like 90 minutes and everything else. And I think this has been the most amazing sales call ever. I think it's fantastic. So Joel and I shake hands with everybody. We walk out into the parking lot. And then Joel turns to me. He puts his hand around my shoulder, looks at me and says, "John, sales engineers do not get paid by the word." I went, "Oh, What do you mean? Your job is not to tell them every single little thing that the software can do. Your job is not to be an educator. You're basically in sales and a problem solver. So he says, listen more, talk less. And as you can tell, that is something that has stayed with me over the years. Sales engineers are not paid by the word. So sometimes as techies, we want to overshare and show people too much and kind of show how smart we are. And that's really that's not why you're in the room.
As you can see now, everyone there listening, John learned from that from that story, from that experience, and was able to create his own organization where he shares all of these experiences. In fact, John, why don't we go a little bit into that and share with us about what you guys are currently doing there at Mastering Technical Sales LLC?
Sure. So we work on professional skills for sales engineers. Now, you might be saying, what's professional skills? Most of the world calls them soft skills. But one marketing tip I'll give you, particularly anybody in sales enablement, is it's much easier to get money for professional skills than soft skills. So we do professional skills. So pretty much anything that a sales engineer does that's outside of pure technology. So business value discovery, demos, presentations, whiteboarding, working with executives, handling question and answer sessions, becoming the trusted advisor. We have a module around that teaches sales engineers best practices and how actually to fit it into their everyday life as a sales engineer. So we have a group of people around the world. So we actually deliver in not only English and American, but also Spanish, Japanese, Korean, and Mandarin. We have about 250 clients around the world right now. And then we also amplify that with training around leadership. So we have the newest book that we just came out with the Sales Engineer Manager's Handbook. And that's been doing really well. So we do leadership classes around that, and then also keynote speeches and a little bit of management consulting too. So what started as an idea for a book 20 years ago, because I couldn't find anybody to come in and train my sales engineers, has now morphed into this amazing company that's truly humbling, right? I mean, who thought? It amazes me every morning when I wake up and think that people want to be trained by this and the company that we have built. So I think that's pretty awesome and says a lot for sales engineers. There's 500,000-600,000 of us around the world, and we are always hungry for knowledge and wisdom, right?
And how can people reach out or contact you or look into getting more information or resources?
Many ways, Christian. So they can obviously do what you did, which is to ping me on LinkedIn. If you have sales engineer in your title or something like that, I'm pretty much guaranteed to respond. Just don't make contact with me and try and sell me something. That's
exactly.
Someone set a new record for that on Friday. I think it was about 6 microseconds after I connected with them. They sent me a message to sell me. Really irritating. You can visit the website, so www.masteringtechnicalsales.com. And there's a ton of free material up there about being a sales engineer. And then obviously you can go and acquire one of the 3 books. So the main book is called Mastering Technical Sales, the Sales Engineer's Handbook. A adjacent volume to that is the Trusted Advisor Sales Engineer. And then the 3rd book is called the Sales Engineer Manager's Handbook. And so they all cater to a slightly different part of the audience. So that's the best way to reach us, through the website, read the book, or just ping us on LinkedIn.
Perfect. Well, there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. That's how you guys can reach out and get more resources. Perhaps if you're starting your career and you want to go into a pre-sales role, this is the place to go to get that information. And from our end, here at Tech Career Podcast, we want to thank you so much for joining us. I want to remind you of something that probably you don't know, but if you have any questions for future shows or you would like to ask questions to any of our guests, you can actually send a recorded message by going to our website at www.techcareerpodcast.com, and you'll see a button there that will say recorded messages, and you can send us your questions. It has been a pleasure, John. Thank you so much for joining the show today.
Oh, you're welcome. This has been fun. I love doing things like this, and it's our way of giving something back to the community, right? So paying it back. So thank you for giving me the opportunity to do it.
I appreciate it, John. Well, thank you, everyone, and have a great day. Thank you for listening to Tech Career Podcast. Don't forget to check out our website for more information on how to connect with us by visiting www.techcareerpodcast.com. That's www.techcareerpodcast.com.